Listen up, United fans. You might not have had many results to rave about in recent years, but with Erik Ten Hag at the wheel, there's plenty to get excited about again at Old Trafford. New signing Antony has hit the ground running with some solid performances already, but it should come as no surprise. He grew up in the depths of the crime-ridden Rio de Janeiro, and resilience has been something that he has always personified. This is the story of how he made it from little hell to the theatre of dreams. Stick around to find out just how record-breaking his transfer truly was. Growing up in hell. How many times have we seen a young winger burst onto the scene at Manchester United? Too many to count. The explosive winger looks set to be the next wonder kid to take off out wide. He makes moving the football look effortless as he glides across the pitch. But it wasn't always this easy for the Brazilian. Antony was born in Osasco, Sao Paulo. While his parents were working class and weren't too poor, he grew up in Inferninho. Yes, that directly translates to Little Hell. Drug trafficking and firefights were commonplace here. It was far away from the city centre, and luckily Antony was never too exposed to these crimes. Nevertheless, his parents both had to travel far for work every day. There's no question that these aren't his parents though. Antony looks just like his mother. He was the youngest of 3 siblings and spent the majority of his childhood with his brother and sister. Antony grew up as a Sao Paulo fan, and his mum and dad would jump through hoops to fund his first love. They would take him to games whenever they could afford it. His dad would work extra hours in order to spoil him with new balls or new boots. Yet Antony never really felt pressure to succeed, and he would always stretch himself to try new experiences with his siblings. Like his elder brother, Antony went through basic education, but whenever he wasn't at school, he was playing futsal. Just like the rest of us, he'd always go for a kickabout on the streets or even bounce balls off walls in his house. It was on the streets that he was stopped by Sao Paulo scouts. From hell to heaven. As he turned 10, he went on trial with his boyhood club and impressed everyone involved. They had no choice but to offer him a youth contract. But as he got older, he didn't quite live up to the hype. Looking at him now, you'd definitely be surprised. Yet Antony struggled for game time and was almost released by the club's academy. The staff did fight his corner though and battled with the manager to keep him in the squad. They eventually convinced him, and Antony quickly shot up the age ranks. It was here that he met Helinho and Igor Gomez. The 3 players quickly became close friends and would move up through the academy system together. Antony was starting to come into himself now. It didn't even take him long to start winning silverware. In September 2018, Sao Paulo won the J-League Challenge tournament in Japan. This is a biennial tournament featuring 2 clubs from the J1 League and some international teams. Antony was a star in this knockout competition. He was named the tournament's best player in post-match awards. Later that month, he hit a true career milestone. He signed his first ever professional contract, which would last until September 2023. Helinho and Gomez were also called up to the senior team alongside the tricky winger. Fast forward to November, and he'd made his first team debut. That's right, didn't even take him long to make an impact. He came on as a substitute for his friend Helinho in a 1-1 draw against Grêmio. Antony then filled in for the club's under-20 team to take part in the Copa Sao Paulo de Futebol Junior. Sao Paulo walked the competition, and our man was named the tournament's best player yet again. He scored 4 goals and set up 6 assists in just 9 games in the cup. We know what you're thinking, surely that sent him back up to the first team. You'd be exactly right, and Antony was immediately re-promoted. Sao Paulo was struggling in the league and needed something to revitalise their campaign. They hoped Antony would be the one to do so. First team success. He started getting more first team minutes and then quickly scored his first goal in March 2019. Antony rescued his side a point here as Sao Paulo drew 1-1 against São Caetano. It was immediately clear that he'd go places. He drifted across the pitch like he owned the place, sending defenders for lunch with his dribbling and skill moves. Most Brazilians dream of a big move abroad to a European side, and that's exactly what Antony wanted. He quickly started to draw eyes with outstanding performances domestically. Sao Paulo had no choice but to offer him an improved contract in July, as he had definitely outscored his pay packet. He would have scored more goals than he had zeros on his payslip. Antony agreed to a contract extension until 2024. New contract, new controversies. Months later in March 2020, the Brazilian made his first appearance in the Copa Libertadores. Just for context, that's pretty much the Champions League of South America. He started in a 2-1 loss to Peruvian side Binacional, and it was at this point that Europe started to come knocking again. Many big sides wanted Antony involved, but then the call came from Erik Ten Hag, who wanted to bring Antony to his project at Ajax. It was a no-brainer for the forward. The winger made the heartbreaking decision to leave his boyhood club, but in return, he earned them a whopping $13 million. The fee could have also risen to $18.2 million if certain clauses were hit. He would join Ajax in July 2020. Yet, as soon as he was riding high on the transfer, he hit his first major obstacle. The COVID-19 outbreak meant that the Libertadores was suspended for several months. Antony therefore made his last appearance for Sao Paulo in March, where he beat rivals Santos 2-1 in his last Sansão derby. In February 2020, Ajax announced the signing of Antony on a 5-year deal. He made his debut for the club in September and bagged a goal straight away. Antony poked in the only goal of an away win over Sparta Rotterdam as Ajax won 1-0. With a solid run of form in the league, it was time to prove it on a continental level. How many times have we seen a player do well domestically but fail to back it up in the Champions League? He wasn't going to be one of those players. Antony made his debut against Atalanta but went off injured in the 90th minute. A week later, he would score his first goal of the competition in a 2-1 win over Midtjylland. Yet, as good as he was, Antony hit another roadblock that season. He had some serious competition. Fighting for a place. Fellow countryman and future friend David Neres competed with Antony for a spot in the starting lineup. Both had great performances. They constantly tried to one-up each other whenever they got game time, and the rivalry between teammates was growing. Antony eventually won his place back though. He would make 46 appearances that season and finish with 11 goals and 10 assists. These contributions helped Ajax win the domestic double, the Eredivisie and the KNVB Cup. Job done, right? All sorted? Of course not. It's never that easy when it comes to Antony. The signing of Steven Berghuis meant that he had another player gunning for his spot in the lineup. Much like in his upbringing in the favela, he had to constantly watch over his shoulder, but again, Antony held his place. With 2 goals and 5 assists against Sporting and Dortmund, Ajax became the first Dutch club to ever win all 6 Champions League group games. Dramatic winners in the league also helped Antony win Player of the Month in December. He was flying high both in the league and in European competition, so high in fact that he could not be ignored by the Brazilian national team. He was called up and played a handful of World Cup qualification games, but in one against Bolivia he ended up being stretchered off with an ankle injury. At first it didn't look too bad, but once he got back to Amsterdam things looked bleak. Ajax's official statement said, "The injury to the right ankle is more serious than initially thought. Erik Ten Hag can in any case not call on Antony for the entire month of April. There is even a chance that the attacker will not be in action at all this season." And miss the season he did. He was out for 114 days. Ajax retained their Eredivisie title, and Antony finished the campaign with 12 goals and 10 assists. New horizons. He bounced back from injury in August against Fortuna Sittard, but something didn't seem right. It wasn't his performance. No, he looked as fluid and as dangerous as ever. But it was something about his attitude. Soon after, the season was plagued with a dispute over his future. Antony wanted to leave Ajax. As January arrived, Manchester United expressed interest. They put in a bid for €85 million. Ajax looked straight down the barrel and declined. This really upset Antony. He purposely missed training the next day. Was it unprofessional? Absolutely. But the winger wanted to voice his discomfort and make his opinion clear. He said in an interview later that year, "I was very happy in Amsterdam. I won titles at Ajax, made friends, and built part of my career. But now I reinforce that I am ready and full of motivation to follow my story and my dreams. People need to listen to me and understand that my motivation moves me towards happiness." He was left out of the matchday squads against Sparta Rotterdam and Utrecht. As the summer window opened, Manchester United wanted to move quickly. Ajax played hardball, but they were eventually ground down. On the 30th of August 2022, United confirmed that they had reached an agreement. Antony signed a 5-year contract for a fee of £82 million, the 3rd highest transfer fee ever paid by United. Only Paul Pogba and Romelu Lukaku cost more. It was Ajax's and the Eridivisie's biggest transfer ever. As he arrived at the club, he was handed the number 21 shirt previously worn by Edinson Cavani. With the weight of a fee like that on his shoulders, it would have been easy to see Antony crumble straight away. but he's had an exceptional start at United, and things look to be brightening up for the Brazilian wonder kid.